The Trump administration says it is proceeding with caution and care to reunite families separated at the border. As the administration faced a court-ordered deadline yesterday, the government reunited less than half of the 102 children under the age of 5 with their families. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar defending the pace of the process.
We could put children back with individuals who are murderers, kidnappers, rapists, or are not their parents, but we've worked with the court to ensure that we do our duty, which is to protect child welfare and ensure that they are in fact that. If we hadn't done this work, if we hadn't done our work to protect child welfare by confirming parentage and doing criminal background checks on these individuals, these children would have been reunited in exceedingly dangerous situations. I'm proud of the work that we do. I believe we are saving kids' lives here.
Meanwhile, this comes as the government says that it will now release migrant families wearing ankle bracelet monitors into the United States. One ICE official telling the New York Times, quote, "Parents with children under the age of 5 are being reunited with their children and then released and enrolled into an alternative detention program, meaning that they will be placed on an ankle bracelet and then released into the community." I'm glad that we have you here to talk about this issue. I've heard you give some very straight talk on this in the past. First of all, let me ask you, how hard is it to confirm that the people posing as parents are really those parents? And how often do you see that it maybe isn't the parents that are with the child? Because different sides of the media believe different things. What's really happening? Well,
we talk about facts. We can say that those instances where someone claims to be a parent but they're not, that child is a victim of trafficking. It's increased over 300% this past year. The numbers are astounding. As far as the story about HHS not working quick enough on reunification, you had a judge that made a decision and grabbed some arbitrary date, was based on nothing, which was unreasonable to have this reunification happen. He doesn't understand the processes that the HHS had to go through. NCIC, family checks, make sure that these parents are good parents. And, and if you look at just this 102 children under the age of 5, 26 of them were reunited because of various issues. 16 of them, of the 26, were because the parents weren't fit. They had significant criminal histories. One had a conviction for murder, one for child cruelty and molestation. So you take that out of the mix, and you had another 5 that, based on DNA testing, weren't even the parents. And a couple of the parents even came forward before the DNA testing and said, okay, I'm not the parent. I used a child to enter the United States. So there's a lot of work that goes into making sure these children are safe. That's the #1 concern, which you don't read in the media. #1 concern of ICE, DHS, and HHS and DOJ is the protection of these children. Make sure, #1, if you're going to release them to somebody, make sure they are a parent, make sure they're not in danger, make sure they're not a victim of trafficking. That takes time. And you can't do it based on some arbitrary date set by some judge who doesn't understand the process.
May I ask a quick follow-up?
Sure.
Whenever.
Well, I mean, how do you feel about the fact that your agency, your former agency, is being attacked for basically abusing these children, for separating them from their parents, when you hear about the conditions that they're in and you hear, you know, people sort of raging over these poor children, and you say that your #1 concern there is the welfare of those children? How do you reconcile that? How do you feel about that? How do you respond to that?
Well, a couple of things. The fine men and women of the Border Patrol, who I consider American patriots, by very fact that, like ICE agents, they leave the safety and security of their home every day and strap a gun to their hip to defend this nation. So shame on anybody that want to vilify these fine men and women. So these Border Patrol agents, no, they didn't go to training to change diapers and make formula. They're doing a great job down there taking care of these kids until they're handed off to HHS. First of all, these kids are being well taken care of. If you look at the underlying issue, why does family separations even happen, right?
That was my next question. Why separate them in the first place?
Well, first of all, let's look at the problem. First of all, the parents of these children chose to enter this country illegally, which is a crime, all right? So under the zero tolerance policy, they will be prosecuted, which means they go to jail and the child gets separated. Just like any American family in this country. I was a police officer in New York. If you arrest a father for domestic violence, you're going to remove him from that home. And it's sad when that child cries, don't want you to take his daddy, but you got to do your job. And you got to remove that threat and put him in jail. So for these groups and some of these leftists, they want better conditions for illegal immigrants that commit a crime than they do for United States citizens.
What role does the Flores settlement have in all of this?
Flores settlement is the underlying issue for those things, because when the crisis first started in FY14, when families started surging, Secretary Johnson was the secretary at the time. I respect the man. I went to him and said, let me build family detention centers, because there's no consequence to deterrence to this illegal activity. They're going to keep coming. And he did. He took a lot of heat for it. We built family detention. And the Flores settlement agreement didn't come into play at the time. So we were actually detaining these families in a family setting long enough for them to see a judge. They're claiming asylum. They
rather than separating them.
Exactly. And most of them lost their cases. Even today, 80% of these cases are lost in immigration court. So they got to see a judge, they got a final order, and we removed them. The first 2 planefuls of families we sent back to Central America had an immediate impact. Numbers dropped significantly on the crossings of the border. It wasn't until the 9th Circuit came up with Judge G, says, okay, we're going to start treating accompanied children like we did unaccompanied children under the, excuse me, we're going to start treating unaccompanied children with their parents, the same as we did in the Flores settlement agreement with unaccompanied children, which means you can't hold that child past 20 days.
Right.
But as soon as that decision was made, it was a matter of days until the numbers started climbing. People heard that. The smuggling organizations use that as a selling ploy, and the numbers skyrocketed again. Oh. So the Flores settlement agreement is the underlying reason. If the Democrats and Congress that want to vilify the men and women of ICE, and they say these people have a right to come to the United States and claim asylum, they have a right to due process, I agree. But let's give them that due process. Let's guarantee to see the judge.
Are 20 days long enough? I mean, there are a lot of questions that you know, maybe Democrats and Republicans could work on together. I want to tap into your experience across 6 different administrations. I mean, you've seen how other presidents have handled this. Why hasn't it been solved until this point? And those pictures of children in cages came from the Obama administration, 2014, but they could have been previous to that too. I mean, we have not significantly made a difference with this issue in decades. Why not?
Well, we actually have under President Trump. I've said many times.
I'm talking previous administrations before we got here, and what is changing?
Well, I started working under President Reagan, and I respect every president I ever worked for, but no president has done more for border security and law enforcement than President Trump. The first year he was in office, and we were out there enforcing the law the way we're supposed to, because he allowed us to through his executive actions. Number of illegal border crossers dropped 40 to a 45-year low, a 4-decade low. That's not a coincidence. That's because this president let ICE and the Border Patrol do their job. And back to your original question, is 20 days long enough? No. The immigration courts don't work that quick. So what happens? Those families get released. Many don't show up in court. And
now they have bracelets. I mean, they have ankle bracelets, and they are changing some of the details of
But many still don't show up in court. And the ones that do show up in court, when they do get a final order removal, they don't leave.
Okay.
That's why we have 500,000 fugitive aliens in this country right now.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Marie, I want you to get in with a question.
Also, to your question, Congress could do something, and they haven't through all those administrations. Tom, there are reports that adults have been sent back to their home countries while their kids have remained in HHS custody. Is that how the process should work? It seems to me like they should be reunited with their children before they are deported, because now we have essentially, for lack of a better term, orphans who are going to be maybe put in foster care because their parents in another country don't know how to find them.
Well, first of all,
that seems like
they got deported because they wanted to be deported. They had to sign to agree to be deported
but shouldn't
rather
their
than seeing the
child
judge.
go with them?
Well, if the parent wanted them to, they could have made those arrangements. But I know of a couple cases I've been briefed on the last couple of days where the parent says, no, I just want to get my child here. I brought him here. He's good to go. He can go to the relatives. I'll go back.
What about the reports that are the other kinds, where parents asked for their children back and now the children don't know how to find their parents? Is that what the U.S. government should be doing in this process?
Well, that's just fake news. I mean,
there are stories of real people.
I've been doing this for 34 years, and these reporters out there.
So you don't think it's happening?
No, I do not. I can tell you that HHS and ICE is working very closely. ICE is detaining parents. Every place that parents are detained, the list of where they're detained and their names is sent to HHS. HHS sends the information on the children back to the parents. They are making arrangements with them to communicate by phone to VTC.
So the stories now that it has happened, you're saying, are not true? Because there have been, I think,
you can pick an anecdotal case where maybe somebody made a mistake in processing, but the overall processes are work. Bottom line is the parents are separating the children because they chose to violate the violate the laws of this country, commit a crime, and enter illegally. If they would have entered through the port of entry, they would have still had the same legal protections. They still can claim asylum and not be separated. But they chose, you know what? I know if I cross between the ports, it's a crime. I know I'm going to be separated. I'm going to do it anyways. So the first blame needs to be with the parents. The second blame needs to be with the Flores Settlement Agreement. And the third blame needs to be with Congress, because I was up on Hill with the head of CBP and the head of CIS asking Congress to fix Flores, fix this, Flores Settlement Agreement, raise the standards of asylum that people are taking advantage of. But they refuse to do it. So if Congress wants to vilify ICE for separating families, Congress needs to look in the mirror, because we gave them the fixes for this months ago.
But we know what the problem is with Congress, right?
They don't want to fix it. They want this to be an issue in November. They're putting their political interests before public safety. They want this to be an issue in November. They can fix it if they want to. They don't want to fix it. They want the president to have a black eye in November.
Is it fair to say?
Wait, I think we're going to take a break because we've got the whole rest of the hour here, and I know that this is going to come back up, and we appreciate all of the questions and all the input that we've got from everybody, and we want to keep this going. So we have more coming up with former acting ICE Director Tom Homan on the Abolish ICE movement. What does he think about that? How does he feel about how his former agency is being treated, and how does he answer more of these questions? Plus, President Trump said yesterday that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were getting cold feet ahead of their Capitol Hill testimony this week. Now Page has backed out. How lawmakers plan to address that, and whether she's facing legal trouble.
She was a part of the mess that we have uncovered over